We are speaking with Josh Rultenberg. He is our Washington, D.C. correspondent right here for East Texas now, and he's going to be speaking to us about quite a few things that are happening right now on Capitol Hill. Let's go ahead and bring him in. Josh, can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you? I know it's been a very busy day for you, so I hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for giving us this time. Now, I want to go ahead and just jump right on. The special counsel in charge of investigating President Joe Biden's handling of classified documents testified on Capitol Hill today. Now, Robert Hur is his name, and he recently released a report that said he would not bring any charges against the president. Josh, what came from this morning's hearing, and how is the White House reacting?
Well, Michaela, if you did not watch this hearing and you had to guess how it went, that's exactly how it went. It was 3 hours in the morning, and it was highly political and highly partisan. And basically, it broke down into three different sections. You had Republicans bashing President Biden, saying that he broke the law, even though that's not what Robert Hur concluded in his report. You had Democrats defending President Biden and going after former President Donald Trump for his own alleged mishandling of classified documents, talking about the alleged obstruction that Trump is facing in his federal classified documents case. And then you had special counsel Robert Hur, who defended his report, and he was getting it from both sides. Republicans were upset that he did not charge the former president, or the current president, I should say, and Democrats were upset that Robert Hur talked about the president's memory. Because if you remember in that report, basically Robert Hur said that President Biden willfully retained classified documents, but that he was not going to charge him because he did not feel that a jury would ultimately convict President Biden because he came off as an elderly man with a poor memory. Now, Robert Hur did defend those comments, and he said that they were, quote, necessary, accurate, and fair. So with that said, again, this is Republicans hoping that they get something out of this to try to revive their impeachment inquiry, because as of right now, it is on life support. I'm not sure that this helped today.
Now, on the campaign trail for both of these gentlemen, tonight will be the night that Donald Trump and Joe Biden seal up, most likely, their party's nominations. What is the significance there?
There's a lot of significance, and we are hearing reports that President Biden has indeed officially clinched the Democratic nomination for president. We know that in just a couple hours, it's all but likely that former President Donald Trump will as well. Look, this is significant for a number of reasons, but number one, just to talk about present day right now, most of America does not want to see this. Poll after poll shows that at least 7 in 10 Americans are not happy about the fact that this is Joe Biden versus Donald Trump Part 2. But to give you a little bit of historical context to what this election will bring, it's the first time since 1956 that we'll have a rematch of two candidates. It's the first time since 1912 that a former president will be running for president again. And it's the first time since 1892 that a former president will be going up against another president. So with that said, there's a lot going on here. And not to mention, Donald Trump's going to make history as the first nominee of either party to be facing criminal indictments. And we know that his first trial comes in just a couple weeks from now. So there's 238 days in between now and Election Day, and it's going to be very nasty every step of the way.
I mean, just hearing those numbers, they kind of put into perspective what we're living through right now, the historical significance of it. But speaking of the White House, the Biden administration, they announced another package of military aid for Ukraine. Where is this money going to come from, though, if Congress has not passed any new legislation?
Yeah, that's a lot of what us journalists were asking at the White House today, trying to figure out, because the White House for weeks and months has said that they're out of money. There's nowhere left to find a stockpile of cash from. But the White House says today that $300 million in aid, whether it's munitions or whether it's missiles, are going to Ukraine because of the fact that the Department of Defense was able to save money on some of the weapons contracts that they were able to procure very recently. So with that said, President Biden and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan both today saying that this is not enough. Even though they're able to come up with this aid, there is more aid that is needed for Ukraine. If you remember, the aid package, the aid bill that is stuck right now in the House of Representatives that was passed by the U.S. Senate calls for $60 billion in aid. As of right now, House Speaker Mike Johnson has no appetite to bring that on on the House floor, even if it would receive enough support, bipartisan support, to ultimately end up on the president's desk. We do know that Democrats and Republicans now are pushing what are called discharge petitions. Basically, what they're trying to do is they're trying to force legislation onto the House floor, even if Speaker Johnson does not want it. It is a long in the weeds process, and it's rarely successful. So we'll wait to see if this $300 million aid is just the first or potentially the last that comes from the United States.
Now, going to the other side of the ticket right now, the judge presiding over former President Donald Trump's Georgia election subversion case says he will rule on whether Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis is disqualified from this case. What more can you tell us, and what does this mean for the case as a whole?
Well, look, Fulton County Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee said after the hearings were done as to whether or not Fani Willis should be disqualified from the case because of an alleged conflict of interest between her and a special prosecutor that she hired, he said it would take up to 2 weeks for him to release this decision. Now, he went on a local radio station in Atlanta, Georgia last week, and he said that he is still on track to make that decision. So it's going to have to come by the end of this week because that's within that time frame. But this is a huge decision because this is a racketeering case the former president is involved in, along with more than a dozen other co-defendants. And if Willis is ultimately disqualified from this case, it could either delay and perhaps derail the entire case, because that would mean that she and her office would be kicked off the case and someone else would be brought in. And you just don't know if that someone else would have the same eagerness to go after this case and to go after the former president. So a lot is riding on this decision. It has nothing to do with the merits of the case, but it is a giant decision.
Alrighty, well, once again, East Texas Now's Washington, D.C. correspondent Josh Rultenberg. Josh, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure.
You got it.